Once there was a man named George. He lived in a town with his wife, Elizabeth, and their 2 sons. John was in 2nd grade, and Jack was 2 years old. George worked as a laborer in a factory. They were not rich, but they were happy. One day, George had a terrible accident. He survived, but he was bedridden. He couldn't even sit up by himself. Elizabeth started working as a maid in several houses. But the money wasn't enough. George needed medicine. And they also had to pay utility bills. John's school fees couldn't be paid. And his name was removed. Elizabeth and George were heartbroken. John wiped his tears quietly. Elizabeth took John to a small restaurant, where daily wage workers ate. The owner agreed to hire him to clean tables and wash dishes. John worked hard, but his heart ached every time he saw other children going to school. Days turned into years. Jack was now 4. Elizabeth worried about his future too. One morning, Elizabeth woke up. She walked over and gently shook John's hand. Elizabeth spoke.
John, wake up. You are going to be late.
John stirred but didn't open his eyes. Elizabeth smiled and went to the kitchen. She filled the kettle with water and set it on the stove. Then toasted some bread. Soon, John came with Jack. They sat at the table and Elizabeth served the breakfast. Elizabeth went to the bedroom. George was waking up. She helped him sit up. Then, she assisted him with his needs. After that, she served tea and bread. They both had breakfast together. Just then, John came and said,
"Mom, I'm leaving,"
and quickly left. After breakfast, Elizabeth got dressed and hugged Jack.
I will be back soon, dear.
She kissed him and left for work. As Elizabeth walked, she thought,
I couldn't do anything for John. But I should admit Jack to school. At least he should study.
Soon, she reached a house and quickly got busy. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, John picked a cloth and started wiping the tables. Soon, customers arrived. A man sat down and called,
"Boy, bring me tea and bread."
Another said,
I will take a boiled egg and a cup of tea.
John hurried to Master Anthony.
"Sir, 1 tea with bread, and 1 tea with a boiled egg."
Anthony nodded and handed him the items.
Be quick, John. More customers are coming.
John rushed back. and placed the tea and bread in front of the first man.
Sir, your tea and bread. You have to pay $5.
The man nodded and handed him the money.
Here, boy.
John then served the second man.
Sir, your tea and boiled egg. That will be $6.
The customer counted the money and gave it to John.
Keep the change, child.
John smiled.
Thank you, sir.
He took the money and quickly went back to get more orders. As John headed home in the evening, he saw many office workers leaving their offices. He sighed.
If I could go to school, maybe I could work in an office too.
Then he shook his head and continued his way home. After dinner, Elizabeth and George were sipping tea. John and Jack sat with them. Elizabeth said,
George, I want to admit Jack to school. At least he should study. I will admit him on Monday. The fee is low.
George smiled and nodded. John said excitedly,
That's great. Mom.
John entered the cabin. Sir Robert handed him a file.
Here are the client's project details. Start working on this.
John nodded and went to his table. He sat down, opened the file, and smiled as he looked at the project details. He adjusted his chair and quickly began working. Just then,
Wake up, dear.
Elizabeth shook his hand. John blinked, confused. Then he smiled.
Oh, it was a dream.
Soon after breakfast, he reached the restaurant. John wiped the table, smiling. Anthony noticed.
Why are you smiling?
John smiled.
I saw a dream. I was working in an office.
Anthony laughed.
That was just a dream. For an office job, you need education.
John's smile faded. He sighed.
How can I become an office employee?
He got busy with work again. One night, John thought,
Maybe a rich man will help me in studies. I heard stories that rich people help the poor.
he smiled. The next evening, he walked past an office. A businessman was heading to his car and passed him. John thought he heard something and turned.
Did you say something, sir?
He asked. The man raised an eyebrow.
No. Why would I say?
He walked away. John's face fell. He sat in the park.
No one will help me. How will I study?
An old man who sat nearby spoke.
Son, no one will help. You must do it yourself.
John nodded and walked home. John had an idea and shared it with Elizabeth. She smiled and gave his hand a gentle pat. He started delivering newspapers early in the morning, before the restaurant job. Soon, he saved enough money. Then, he began selling stationery, eggs, and bread etc. on his cycle. One Sunday evening, John said,
Mom, Dad, I don't need to work at the restaurant now. I'm joining school. I will sell items after classes.
Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears.
Now both our sons will study,
She said. George hugged John.
We are proud of you, son.
Jack hugged him too, smiling.